In today's episode, you're going to learn 20 phrases that will help you speak English like a solid B2 level learner. This is going to be a great opportunity for you to boost your vocabulary and also test your overall B2 knowledge of English. So, let's get started. Hey there, how's it going? Thiago here and welcome to another video. I am a Cambridge certified English teacher and I have been teaching this language for 20 years. I know all about this struggle of moving from B1 to B2 and then later to C1 and finally C2 levels. So, if you're new here, welcome to the channel. Let me remind you that today's episode is going to be highly practical. So, if you're listening to me right now at the gym or while driving, that's fine. Keep listening to the episode, but I highly recommend you revisit and come back to this episode later once you have more time in order to actually study with it, because we're going to be going over here some very useful phrases that, if you incorporate, is going to make you sound like an upper intermediate to advanced speaker of English, all right? Before I go over the list here with you, I want to invite you to book a one-on-one call with me. This is a fluency discovery call, and if you need some guidance or if you are in doubt about what your current level of English is and what to do next, book a call with me. For 90 minutes on Zoom, you and I will be talking. I'll be closely listening to you in your English. I'll be asking you questions. And then I'm going to help you determine what your level is at the moment and the next steps you need to take in order to see improvement and move to the next level. The link is here in the description of the video, and I'm looking forward to talking to you. Book a one-on-one call. It's going to be great to meet you and talk to you. All right? So let's get started here. Look, if you want more challenge during this episode, I highly recommend you also pause the video sometimes because, it's going to work like this. First, I'm going to give you the phrase that a typical B1 learner would speak. Then right after, I'm going to give you a phrase that a typical B2 learner would speak, right? The equivalent for B2. If you want more challenge or an extra challenge, you can pause after each B1 sentence and then give yourself some time to try to rephrase that sentence more in the vein of B2 level, all right? So let's do the first set here just so you understand what I mean. So here is a typical phrase that a B1 learner would speak. Listen, I can't come to the party tonight. I can't come to the party tonight. Now, if you want, you can pause this video and think to yourself, okay, this is a B1 level sentence. How would a B2 learner say the same thing? What words would I have to change? What grammar would I have to use? How would I rephrase this so that it sounds slightly more advanced? You can pause, do that mental exercise, and then you can hit play again to see the answer. All right? So here is the suggested variation at B2. Remember, B1 would say, I can't come to the party tonight. At B2, you would say something like this. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make it to the party tonight. You see the difference? So I'm adding, unfortunately, first of all, and instead of saying I can't, which is much simpler, I'm saying I won't be able to. You see? I won't be able to is replacing can't. And instead of come to the party, I am saying make it to the party. When you make it to an event, you attend the event. You go. You see, so not only am I using different structures here, but also more colloquial vocabulary. Now, keep in mind that when you think of B2 level, yes, you are thinking of more sophistication and more advanced vocabulary and structures, but still not that crazy advanced. Like super crazy advanced stuff, you're going to see more at C1 and C2 levels. So B2, at its core, it's still everyday language, all right? It's still pretty standard language, but with little hints and nuances of more sophistication and advanced language features, like you can just see here. Look, I won't be able to make it to the party tonight. That's not crazy advanced level in terms of vocabulary and grammar, but compared to I can't come to the party tonight, it's a step up. You see? So think of B2 as that. It's the everyday standard language with that step up that is a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more advanced. All right? So let's move on to the next item here. Listen, B1, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea. Again, you can pause the video if you want. Try to rephrase it to a more B2 level type of sentence. Let me give you the answer here. I think it's a good idea. You could say, I'd say that's a brilliant idea. You see, so I'm not just using the word good, which is quite basic. I'm using brilliant. Now, the word brilliant is even more expressive, isn't it, than good. Oh yeah, I think it's a good idea. I would say that's a brilliant idea. See the difference? Or you can also say, I'm inclined to agree. I'm inclined to agree. You see? Variations to the first sentence. I think it's a good idea. The next phrase, B1. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? B2 level, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this matter. Whoa, very different, isn't it? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this matter. So instead of what do you think, which is a direct question, I am using more of an indirect question here. I would be interested to hear your thoughts. You see, I am asking you, but in a more indirect way. That makes me sound more advanced, more polite, and more polished. So, I would be, I contract to I'd be. So, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this matter. You see, I'm using on this matter instead of about this. Next phrase, B1. I have to go now. I have to go now. B2. I'm afraid I must be going now. I'm afraid I must be going now. So this term, I'm afraid, is a way of politely softening your message. I'm afraid I must be going now. It's a polite way to say, I have to go. Notice that a typical B1 learner here would say maybe something like, sorry. Sorry, I have to go now. That's fine. Sorry, I have to go now. But if you don't want to say that, you can say, I'm afraid I must be going now. By using I'm afraid, you are kind of communicating something similar to I'm sorry, but without explicitly saying sorry. And it's a little bit more empowering, I would say. It's much more empowering to say, I'm afraid I must be doing this now, than sorry, I have to do this now. All right? Next phrase, B1. I'm very happy with the result. I'm very happy with the result. Again, pause the video if you want. Try to think of a better way to phrase this, a more B2 level way. Now, here's a variation, a suggestion. I'm extremely pleased with the outcome. I'm extremely pleased with the outcome. You see, so I'm very happy becomes I'm extremely pleased. Pleased replaces happy, and extremely replaces very. And instead of result, I'm using outcome, which is a synonym, and it's more advanced. You see, the adjectives that I'm using here at the B2 level sentence are stronger, right? I'm very happy with the result. I'm extremely pleased with the outcome. All right? Moving on to the next set. B1. The weather is very bad today. The weather is very bad today. B2. The weather is quite dreadful today. The weather is quite dreadful today. You see, a little earlier, for very good, we said brilliant. Now, for very bad, you could say dreadful, which is a more advanced word. The weather is quite dreadful today. All right? By the way, as I'm going through this list with you, it might be a good idea for you to also shadow, especially the B2 level sentences. All right? So when I show you the B2 level variation, make sure you also shadow along with me, listen and repeat, because, We are practicing. Remember, today's episode is highly practical. Next set, B1. I'm not sure if I understand. I'm not sure if I understand. B2. I'm having trouble following your line of reasoning. I'm having trouble following your line of reasoning. Your line of reasoning is your sequence of events, how you are processing and explaining the information here. Another variation you could use here could be your train of thought, which is similar, your train of thought. So I'm having trouble following your train of thought or following your line of reasoning. It's interesting because, here the word follow or following has the meaning of understanding. Did you know that? Did you know that follow could mean understand? So I can tell you that I don't understand this, or I'm not following. I'm not following this. You see, it has the same idea, the same meaning. I'm sure as we are going through this list, you can see the difference between B1 level language and B2 level language, can't you? And that's the main purpose of this episode. Next phrase. Can you help me? Can you help me? That's B1 level. Now, for B2, you could say, I was wondering if you might be able to lend me a hand. I was wondering if you might be able to lend me a hand. So again, we are turning a direct question into an indirect question. Can you help me becomes I was wondering. That's an indirect question. And instead of help, I'm using an expression, an idiom. Lend me a hand. Remember that one of the main differences between a B1 level learner and a B2 level learner is the vocabulary range. A B2 learner should be able to know and use more colloquial language, more phrasal verbs, more idioms, like this one, lend me a hand, instead of help. Next phrase, B1, I'm tired. I'm tired. B2, I'm feeling a bit worn out. I'm feeling a bit worn out. Again, the phrasal verb, yeah? When you feel worn out, you feel tired. Next one, I need to find a new job. I need to find a new job. Versus, I'm currently in the process of seeking new employment. I'm currently in the process of seeking new employment. This is an interesting sentence as well because remember that in order for you to sound more sophisticated, more advanced in English, the tendency is for you to use more nouns in your sentence. Prioritize more nouns instead of verbs and adjectives. This is a perfect example. If you look at the B1 variation, which is quite straightforward and standard, I'm mainly using verbs and adjectives here. I need, that's a verb. To find, that's another verb. And a new job. New is the adjective. I mean, yes, job is a noun, but it's a pretty simple noun. But the core of the sentence, I need to find a new job, is verb and adjective. Now, look at the difference. I'm currently in the process. You see, process is a noun. I'm currently in the process of seeking. Seeking is a verb, but it's a more advanced variation than finding, or looking for. So I'm currently in the process of seeking new employment. You see, employment is another noun that is much more advanced than just job. So I'm currently in the process of seeking new employment. So notice that while in the B1 variation, I only have one noun, job. In the B2 variation, I have two nouns, process and employment. Not to mention the verb seek, which is slightly more advanced than finding or looking for. You see the difference? So also keep that in mind. In order to sound more sophisticated in English, prioritize more nouns in your sentences. All right? Moving on to the next set. I went to the cinema last night. I went to the cinema last night. That's B1. B2, you could say, I caught a movie at the cinema last night. I caught a movie at the cinema last night. Now, cinema is mainly British. Americans would say just movies. So in American English, we could say, I went to the movies last night. That's more B1 level. I went to the movies last night. Or for B2, you can just simply say, I caught a movie last night. I caught a movie last night, which makes it sound more colloquial. Next phrase, the problem is difficult. The problem is difficult. That's B1 level. Now, a variation at B2 could be, the issue presents a significant challenge. The issue presents a significant challenge. So instead of problem, I'm using issue. And instead of difficult, I'm saying that the issue presents a significant challenge. Remember what I just told you about prioritizing nouns in more advanced language? Here's another example. At B1, I only have one noun, problem. The problem is difficult. Difficult is an adjective. I'm using only one noun here. At B2, I am using two nouns, issue instead of problem, and challenge. Challenge is also a noun. You see? So while at B1 I'm using just one noun, at B2 I'm using at least two. Prioritizing nouns. The issue presents a significant challenge. All right? Next one, B1, I have a lot of work to do. I have a lot of work to do. B2, I have a considerable amount of work on my plate. I have a considerable amount of work on my plate. That sounds much more formal, doesn't it? So instead of a lot, considerable. Considerable amount, right? And again, listen to the colloquial language here. You have a lot of work or a considerable amount of work on your plate. You see? I have a lot on my plate. I'm busy. That sounds colloquial. It's the typical phrase a native speaker will use in everyday conversation. So not only do you have to understand that kind of phrase, but also be able to use it. Next up, we should talk about this. We should talk about this. A B2 variation could be, we need to have a discussion regarding this matter. We need to have a discussion regarding this matter. So instead of talk about, have a discussion regarding. Regarding replaces about. And instead of just saying this, I can say this matter. We need to have a discussion regarding this matter. Now, keep in mind that, as you can see by now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with B1 level language. B1 level language is functional. It's operational. It works. All right? We should talk about this. I have a lot of work to do. That's fine. You see, these are all straightforward ideas that you are communicating. If you can get to this level already, you can do many things in English. You can communicate effectively in everyday situations. But if you are following me here, if you're watching me every week, it's because you want more than that for your English, right? You want to get to the next level. You want more sophistication. You want to sound more professional even. Or you want to have more choices, more language choices, when communicating. That's why we do it. It's the constant improvement, all right? So there's nothing wrong with communicating at more of a B1 straightforward level. But if you want to move to the next level, you need to also become familiar with these other variations that are slightly more advanced, more formal, and more professional. Moving on to the next one, I want to ask you a question. A B2 variation could be, I'd like to pose a question to you. Whoa, nice, right? I'd like to pose a question to you. Or even, I'd like to pose a question. So when you pose a question, you ask that question. But you see, that sounds more sophisticated, doesn't it? It's a different piece of vocabulary that is not so obvious as ask a question, pose a question. You see? Moving on, it was a big surprise. it was a big surprise. At B2 level, you could say, it took me completely by surprise. It took me completely by surprise. Again, which is a more colloquial type of phrase. Next up, can you repeat that? Can you repeat that? That one is classic, right? Every learner knows this question, and it's one of the most basic, simple, and one of the first phrases we learn, right? It's one of those survival phrases, especially when traveling. Can you repeat that? Can you repeat that? That's okay, but a more advanced variation here could be, could you please rephrase that for me? Could you please rephrase that for me? So instead of asking the person to repeat, you are asking the person to rephrase. Actually, I find that that is actually much more efficient, asking the person to rephrase instead of repeat, because the person tells you something you don't understand. If you ask the person to repeat, can you repeat? The person is probably going to say the same words. And then you risk not understanding the second time because maybe the person is using vocabulary that you don't get. But if you immediately ask the person to rephrase, excuse me, could you please rephrase that? The person will be forced to use different words. And now, at the second time, you might have higher chances of actually understanding. You see? But something else that I want to point out here is maybe you are watching this episode now, you are listening to it, and you look at this phrase, this question, could you please rephrase that for me? And you might be thinking, oh, I know this phrase. I know this question. Yeah, could you please rephrase that for me? Yeah. It's not so sophisticated. It's not so advanced. I know it. Okay, good job. But here's my question. Do you use it? Do you use it when you speak English with people? You might realize that, oh, no, I don't really use it. I usually say, can you repeat that? Can you repeat that? You see, just having a lot of passive knowledge won't get you to a solid B2 level, all right? You got to use that knowledge, So think about that, all right? If you have this feeling, going over these phrases like, oh, these are easy. These are not so sophisticated. They are not so advanced as I thought B2 would be. Think to yourself, but am I using these phrases regularly in my conversations, in my comments here on YouTube, whenever I use English, whenever I produce English? Am I using these phrases? Ooh, no. So I have to use them more. You see, and that's very important, guys, because you might have B2 level knowledge passively, but when you produce English, you are speaking like a B1 level learner. You see? So if you produce language at B1 level, it doesn't matter if you have a B2 or even C1, level knowledge passively, You got to use the knowledge that you supposedly have, all right? So think about that. Next one. I'm very interested in this topic. I'm very interested in this topic. Versus, I'm deeply intrigued by the subject. I'm deeply intrigued by the subject. You see, it's this subtle nuances here. I'm not saying I'm very. I'm saying I'm deeply. And I'm not saying interested. I'm saying intrigued. And I'm not saying topic, I'm saying subject. All right? Also think about that. In order for you to move to a more solid B2 level, you should learn more synonyms. You see, topic, subject, interested, intrigued, repeat, rephrase. All right? Synonyms. You should learn different ways to say the same thing. This is increasing your vocabulary range. You see? So a learner who has a wide vocabulary range can do that. Can paraphrase, can use different words to communicate the same or similar idea. All right? The next sentence, the company is growing. The company is growing. That's B1, pretty straightforward. B2 could be, the company is experiencing significant growth. The company is experiencing significant growth. Again, prioritizing the noun, right? Instead of growing, the verb, I'm using the noun growth. You see, the company is experiencing significant growth. That sounds much more advanced than the company is growing. Got it? And finally, the last set is let's meet at 8 o'clock. Let's meet at 8 o'clock, which is perfectly fine in everyday conversations. But a slightly more advanced variation could be, shall we arrange to meet at 8 o'clock? Shall we arrange to meet at 8 o'clock? All right? I mean, think about maybe a very formal situation at work, or maybe you are talking to the president of the company and you have to arrange a meeting with him, and you want to sound more polite, more respectful, more formal. You don't know each other very well. So it's perfectly fine for you to say, shall we arrange to meet at 8 o'clock? By the way, let me give you here a very useful piece of information, right? And, it's one of those things that I find that teachers don't teach as well or as often, Let's. Let's is not a question, okay? Let's is not a question. So never speak a let's sentence with a question tone. So don't say, let's go, let's play. Never do that. It's a sentence, it's a statement. So your tone should be of an affirmative sentence. Let's go. Yeah, let's go. Let's play. If you want to ask the question, you're going to use shall we. All right? Shall we go? Shall we play? So shall we is the question form for let's. Remember that. Let's, I speak with a tone of sentence, not with a tone of question. If you want to ask a question, use shall we. Did you know that? Now you do. So you see, these are just a few examples, but I'm sure that by now you have a better grasp, a better understanding of what language at B2 level looks like. Now, keep in mind that that's not the only thing that you need to take into account in order to become a solid B2 level learner. There are other skills at play, right? There's your speaking skills, your listening skills, reading skills, writing skills. It's a combination of all these things. But in terms of language, these are some examples of what you will be expected to be able to produce at a B2 level of English, all right? There are tons more, but I wanted to give you a better grasp on this matter today, all right? I hope you enjoyed this episode today. I hope you found it useful. Again, if you need help with this stuff, book a one-on-one call with me, a Fluency Discovery call. We're going to talk for 1 hour and a half on Zoom. I'm going to help you determine whether you are at B1 or even at B2 already, but you need to solidify some things. And then after our call, I'm going to send you by email an action plan with some resources, some useful links that you can use to take your English to the next level. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. Like this video. Leave me a comment down below letting me know what you thought about this list today. And share this video with another friend who's also trying to get to a solid B2 level of English. When it comes to vocabulary, phrasal verbs, for example, are essential for every solid B2 learner to know. And that reminds me of an episode that I did here on the channel a few months ago about that. So I highly recommend to check out this episode now. I did it a few months ago, and it's an in-depth lesson on phrasal verbs. So check it out now. Keep studying, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next video.